But there's so many people, food truck owners, that will call me and say, I'm got a problem, can you help me raise my sales? And I'll go through the social media posts and they'll have some good comments, but they don't respond.
Hi everyone, Justin Prestidge here, owner of Custom Trailer Pros, and I have the deep honor of sitting here with Bill Moore. Bill is the godfather of food truck operations. I could go on. I'll let you do the intro and tell people a little bit about yourself, but we're going to be answering the question today. If someone is interested in starting a food truck, what's the best way for them to go about that? And that's a really deep question because there's a lot of things on that list that they need to check off. So we'll get into that. But first of all, Bill, you've been doing corporate training for a long time. You operate your own food truck. You've written books. Tell us a bit about your background here.
My background starts in 1977. I started working at fast food restaurants and just worked my way up the chain. Like you said, eventually became a corporate trainer. I was a guy that walked around and checked off things and saying, hey, you're not doing it right. From there, I got into doing my own food truck early on. So my daytime job was corporate training. Nighttime job was selling hot dogs. And I did that for many, many years. When I got to the point where I'm old, I'm going to retire, you know, as a godfather, you're old, so you're retired. So I retired and drove my wife crazy. She said, you need to do something, find you a hobby or something. I know, I'll write books. So I wrote books and it just snowballed from there. So we have books and we have Facebook groups, we have all kinds of things to help food truck owners become successful.
And at Custom Trailer Pros, we have such a desire to help our customers to be as successful as possible, as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And so we can do a certain amount, but a lot of times by the time a customer comes to us, they're well down the path of starting their own food truck. But we oftentimes have to backtrack a little bit because they might think they're ready, but they're actually not ready. And so, you know, we can talk about it like, is your money in order and those things. And so, but really, have they planned accordingly? Are they really setting themselves up to be successful? So when hopeful operators come to you and they say, because I know you and I hear the same thing a lot of times, my food is so great. Everybody says I should be selling it. So I'm going to start a food truck. It's going to take off. I'm going to be successful and I'm going to become rich and famous. Mm-hmm. And then we say, well, okay, let's make sure you've got an actual real plan behind that before you get going. So when people come to you, what are some of the first things that you tell them they need to get in order before they start a food truck?
Well, there's really three things I tell them you got to get done. You've got to understand three things. One is, why do you want to do this? Because being told that you have awesome food is a good pat on the back. We love hearing that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you really do have awesome food.
Right.
And then can you produce that awesome food in volume to make money? So I want them to give me the why. What is your motivation to do this? Because that's the carrot I'm going to dangle when they start hitting those rough points. You told me this was important to you.
Right.
You need to continue on and push through whatever difficulty they're facing. So I want to know their why. Then the next thing that I want them to do on their own is start doing research into rules and regulations in their area, because they're all different, and there are a number of people that quit at that point. Mm-hmm. Because they realize, oh my goodness, this is regulated. They didn't know that there were regulations. They didn't know they got to deal with the government, and they just don't want to deal with it. So I get them to do their own research so that they understand what kind of mess they're getting themselves into. Right. And then also I tell them record how much it costs, because I want them to start thinking in dollars and cents every step along the way. Once they've got the rules and regulations and they're eager to keep going, I tell them, let's talk about your food now. You tell me what you're going to sell, and I'll let them list off everything they want to sell. And I'll let them list off as much as they think. I'm one of those people that let them motivate and keep going. So they will literally have a card, or I'll have a card, and they'll put on all kind of words. And I'm like, no, we can't do that much.
Right. You
won't have space, you won't have cooking capacity, you won't have storage capacity. So let's reel that in a little bit. What can you really sell? What are you most proud of? So we work on the menu, and then how much does it cost you? You know, because a lot of people will look at, okay, I can go out and buy hot dogs. I did hot dogs for many, many years. I can buy a package of hot dogs and sell them for $2 a piece, and I can make a bunch of money. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Because you got to pay for employees, because you don't want to work all the time, or at least pay for yourself. At least you got to pay insurance. You got to pay all those different expenses. that they don't take into consideration. They think I can buy a $5 package of hot dogs and I can make $25.
Right.
And it just doesn't happen. So once I get into that point, so they understand this is a business, because I talk dollars and cents all the time. They have to know this is a business. Then we get into the next series of steps.
Right. In the business world, when I coach startups, we talk about the concept of you have to be willing to accept the idea that you might have an ugly baby. No one thinks their baby's ugly, but you might have an ugly baby. And so if you're not open to that idea, then you're not going to evaluate. If you're not going to evaluate, you're not going to learn. If you can't learn, you can't grow. And so we've got to tear it down and kind of start at the basics of, maybe your mom and dad tell you that your food's the greatest they've ever had, but that is a very, very different thing from being at a festival or something like that and having customer after customer actually love and appreciate your food and being able to reproduce it at scale is a whole nother monster that people just aren't aware of. And how could you be? You've never had to do it, but these are things that you really need to think about and think through. And so I like the idea of what you're talking about. Before you even take one step towards purchasing a food truck, there is a lot of work that you got to do ahead of time before you even take that step. Because what you're talking about, someone's not even ready to start looking at food trucks yet
because they don't know
work some of those things out. Yeah,
100%.
With the menu, we had a customer recently that I interviewed, and I loved. He said, "Yeah, I was able to design my trailer well because I listened to Bill Moore's podcast, and I listened to the advice about how to set up your menu and start small and be flexible with it." And so he did, and he was selling Sloppy Joes. And what's great about his story was he's an older guy, so serving Sloppy Joes on a bun reminded him of being a kid, and he loved it, and he was using his grandma's recipe, and it was really important to him. But when he started, he wasn't selling that many, and he realized, oh, there's younger generations who've never even had a Sloppy Joe, and so he started rethinking his menu, talking to his customers about it, and he realized if he could offer it on top of fries or on top of nachos covered in cheese, that he would sell a lot more. He started selling more. But even at that, young kids still weren't wanting to eat Sloppy Joes. And so, because he had started so small, he could expand his menu a little bit. He added chicken tenders to what he was doing. And then the kids started ordering chicken tenders. So the whole family could come now to his food truck and order. And now today, he sells more chicken tender baskets than he does Sloppy Joe baskets. And so his last minute add-on item that he had never planned on putting on his menu is now his most popular item. And it just goes to show what you're talking about of start small, start simple. You can learn, grow, and adjust as you move along. But if you try to start with 40 menu items, it's a recipe for disaster because you're never going to be able to recreate that at scale.
No, you definitely can't. One of the things you mentioned about talking to his guests, you let the guests lead what the menu's going to be. You start little teeny tiny, and they'll tell you, hey, if you would add this, I would come more frequently. And sometimes they have really good ideas.
Right.
When you talk about somebody that sells good food, they've been patted on the back so many times, it also comes down to being a family unit, and they all have similar palates. So it may be awesome for them.
Right.
But until you start selling it to the public, and they'll tell you, no, there's too much seasoning, or there's too much salt, or whatever. It becomes, like you said, an ugly baby sometimes.
Right.
And you have to accept that.
Right. And it involves laying our ego down because a lot of times we think, customers don't know what they're talking about. I'm the chef. I know what I'm talking about. And people will refuse to adjust their menu or some specific items and the flavor of it. And that's a hill that they're willing to die on. And they will die on that hill if they don't listen.
I pour.
Yeah, exactly. And so if someone has gone through that and they've talked with their health department, they have a good understanding of those things, menu cost, and they're ready to take those next steps that you talked about, what would be the next step for them?
Well, at the point that they've got those things that you mentioned completed and we're confident that they can be profitable with their menu, then I'm going to move them into, you need a whole bunch of support systems. You're going to need Certainly talk to the health department even more, because they want you to be successful, because that's tax income they can collect. So they want you to be successful. But we also talk to them about, you need a repairman on speed dial, because things are going to break.
Right.
No matter how great you are at fixing things, something's going to mess up. Then we also want them to have, insurance agents. We want them to have accountants. You may need an attorney, and you want to have those before you ever really need them.
Right.
Because once you're in that panic mode of, oh my God, this has happened, you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
We don't want to make bad decisions at that juncture. Once I've got them understanding the partners that they need and get them on speed dial, then we move into talking about, what are you going to set up on the equipment? Yeah. We've talked about the menu and what you're going to cook. Now let's talk about what can you afford as far as equipment goes, and then being able to set up that equipment in an efficient way to serve the food as quickly as possible. Because there's many ideas that you come across when you start to lay them out. Like, oh crap, this is not going to work.
Right.
And I'm sure you see that.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where we come into the process, because we help our customers lay out their floor plan and do the design. And one of the concepts that we educate a lot of our customers on is the idea of plates per minute. How much food can you serve in a certain period of time?
Yeah.
And if as a business, you have to be able to serve a lot of food in a short amount of time. I've got a lot of customers who are determined to cook everything fresh and made to order and all that, and it takes 10 minutes to make a meal. Well, from a business perspective, you'll never sell enough plates in order to make that work. And so you're going to have to figure out ways around that to be able to serve a lot of food in a short amount of time. And so we talk about workflow within the food truck. Do you have an ABC type of setup that you're utilizing that you can, from your cook line to plating and to out the window, it actually makes sense and you're doing it in a specific order. If you don't know your menu, if you don't know all those things, how are you going to design something that's truly efficient and set up for that?
That is very true. One of the people that I've worked with in the past really told me, I can sell this much stuff. But when we started to go through the process, just like you said, 10-minute cooking process isn't bad, but you have to have multiples of those going.
Right.
They were doing it all linearly. So 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes later, they started the next one. That will not work. So that means you only wait on 6 people an hour.
Right.
You will not be self-sustaining with 6 people an hour.
Unless the plates are $100 a piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you're not going to make it. So that's really good. Okay, and so as they're setting up partners and all of that stuff, I mean, it's so fascinating, because we have a lot of customers who come to us and they think the hard part is actually the first steps of getting a food truck, and they're standing in the food truck. It's like once they get there, everything's going to be smooth sailing. But as you know, it's quite the opposite.
Yes.
Getting to that point might be the easiest point so far. So if they've done the health codes and they've got the right partners and they've designed their food truck, they had it built by a reputable company, and now it's in their hands and they're ready to get going. Now what kind of challenges should they expect to face?
They need to work on a marketing plan. And the marketing plan is going to help sustain them every single day. And they need to have certain things that they do that always relates back to marketing. So for example, we talk about, you've got to have social media set up, and you got to have a posting pattern. And that posting pattern needs to involve, obviously, food, because we sell food, but it needs to involve a little bit about the business itself, because people are curious. They want to know about you, and then know about the owner. You talk about your kids or whatever is important to you. And if you have that kind of mix of content, people want to look forward to the next thing. When a food truck has nothing but open, close, open, close, open, close, people, no, I'm not even going to follow you.
Right.
Because you're not interesting to me. When I'm hungry and I think about you, I'll look up where you're at.
Right.
You got to have the content that makes them want to look at you.
Right. And we see a lot of times, sorry to interject, but we see a lot of times where people post picture after picture after picture of their food, a close-up plate of food, which I don't have a problem with, except if that's the only thing, and you're operating in a food truck and you're parked outside of a Home Depot or something like that, People need to know what to look for when they come find you. Take
Exactly.
a picture of your setup. Show us what your truck looks like. Make that image burn into our brains. That's part of your marketing, so that they might see you in a totally different part of town randomly as they're driving through, but they now know it's your truck and your food, and that they like what they've gotten from you before. So you need to not just be narrow-minded and focus on the food only, but like you're saying, do other things, tell personal stories, let them get to know you as the owner. And for Pete's sake, please show your setup so people know what to look for when they're coming to find you.
Definitely, they need to do that. Yeah, I tell people, if you're worried about social media content, you can spend one day a week and then schedule it all. And that part of that schedule would be every single day that you are not open, just one post. And that gets into, let's talk about me, let's talk about a recipe that I like. And you can just show them that real quick video of a recipe. It does not have to be something you sell.
Right.
It can be anything, it can be grandma's cookies. But at least they got something interesting to look at that relates back to your business. When you're going to be open, now I want you to do 3 scheduled posts. You know you're going to be open at some point, so let's send out a post and let people know where you're going to be, just like you said. Have that address there, and really that's the picture that should be of the food truck or food trailer.
Right.
You know, I'm in front of Home Depot. I'm on 5th and Main. You know, here's that picture. So it reminds people that you're going to be there. Next scheduled post is when you're going to be open. You know, if you're open at 10, that post goes out automatically. You don't have to think about it. Lets people know, hey, we're open, and that's a food picture.
Right.
Let's get them thinking about food. Then at the end of the day, it's going to be another picture, nothing to do with food, because you're at the end of the day. You don't want to get people enticed to come find you when now you're just teasing them, saying, hey, you didn't eat, so here's a picture to make you hungry. So what you do is say, thank you guys so much for the opportunity today. So it's a thank you post. It's not I'm closed, because I'm closed is negative.
Right.
You know, I've missed out on the food. You're saying, thank you so much. I will be at, and then put tomorrow's address.
Right.
And then those 3 things can be scheduled. So you don't have to think about, I got to create something. Do that every single week. You do that pattern, you're going to have more people come in because they look forward to reading your feed.
Yep. Exactly. And as we know, the algorithms with social media are such that if people actually interact with your posts, they'll see your posts more often when you do post. And so you want to put content out there that actually sometimes might ask a question. Hey, what's one menu item you want to see tomorrow? You know, or hey, we're going to add something new. Vote on A, B, or C for our menu. Anything like that that encourages interactions will mean that your content is going to show up in their feed more often, which is always beneficial. Okay, so their marketing is one. What are some of the other things that they can be doing to work towards success as a business?
Some of the other things that I tell people they've got to do, this is not you should do it, this is you need to do it, would be you got to have a business plan, because the business plan lays out the steps that you're going to take to grow the business. And it doesn't have to be a super complicated 40-page document, but it does need to have a little bit of proof of I can sell stuff. These are my projections that I'm going to do in sales, and then how are those expenses going to be handled with those projections in revenue. And I teach people how to do that in a simple way. And if they do that, they're far more likely to be successful because they have that little roadmap to follow. And then it just becomes, now we execute. Once you got that business plan, you get the thing open, I want you to focus on 4 things: quality, service, cleanliness, and community. Quality, food. You need to do that every single day. Service, got to be fast and friendly. Okay. Cleanliness is going to make the health department super happy. And of course, it keeps people coming back. But the community, that's the one where everyone falls down. That is building your marketing and your social media. People have to know about you as a business, need to know about you as an owner. They need to know, when can I expect you to show up? So we focus on that community, and the community has to be a conversation. Social media is super easy to be a conversation, but there's so many people, food truck owners, that will call me and say, I've got a problem, can you help me raise my sales? And I'll go through the social media posts, and they'll have some good comments, but they don't respond to it. Right. They don't have that conversation. So they basically have hung up that phone on somebody that's telling you how I love your food. Click.
Yep. Yeah, and the last thing that I'll add to that too as we wrap up, because I know you and I have been at this for a while, so you and I can keep talking in depth, but really I think we've answered some key questions here. These are starting points to help people launch their business. But the last thing I'll add to it too is that you need to have resources around you. When you hit those hard spots, who can you go to and ask questions? Is there someone who can mentor you, things like that? I mean, you and I are sitting here at the Food Truck Owners Expo, and they put this on twice a year, and this is such a great resource for food truck owners to go to, because you can get in-depth education from you. I'm teaching some, and there's a bunch of others that are here teaching classes that are really helpful. There's tons of vendors here that are in the industry that can be great to connect with. And I know you've started the National Street Food Vendors Association, which is an amazing resource for people. And so things like that they can do to build their resource network, I think, is massive and can make a difference between whether they succeed or fail as a business, because every business, no matter what industry you're in, is going to hit some bumps in the road.
Yep.
And going to hit some really tough spots and going to get discouraged, and you're going to need people around you to help pick you up in those moments. So, Bill, I thank you so much for your time. I'm always happy to get a little bit of time with you and pick your brain. Like I said, I view you as the godfather in this space. And so I know a lot of other people do as well. If people want to get in touch with you, what's a good way for them to do that?
Probably the easiest thing would be to, on our Facebook group, go to Food Truck Training on Facebook and message me. People do it all day long.
Yep. Awesome. All right, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed this video. If there's anything we missed, let us know in the comments below. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And until next time, happy trucking. You see me rolling on camera. And so I wanted to,
Oh, I'm... That's done.